They just
10
add
people.
more squares, Corey.
They just keep adding more squares. It's magic.
Due to the magic of computers these days, we can actually handle more than 9 video feeds at once.
At least it's not like FaceTime where the bubbling heads just float around aimlessly. You're like, where are you going? Grandma, come back. She's just like floating up. It's like, what?
Yeah, years ago, like if you go back like 12, 13 years ago on Security Weekly, we had a bunch of like the, what are they called? Telex. They were the dial-in boxes where people could call a phone number, an honest-to-God phone number, and then we would convert it and then run it into the computer. And then we had mixing boards to mix all of it.
We should bring that back, but you have to war dial it, and it just puts you straight on the show, like modem tones only.
Yeah, that's all we're going to let in. We've had it. That's Internet 3.0. We aren't going forward. We're actually just decided, screw it. We're going backwards from now on.
It's more secure.
All right. I think we're ready to rock and roll. Let's do it.
All right. Oh, wait. We got Bo. He had to go, and now he's back. Let me bring him back.
Yay.
There he is.
Hey-o.
Welcome back, Bo.
Welcome back, Cotter. I mean, Bo. I'm aging myself there, even though I'm too young to have seen that show.
What? Can we get this started?
Yeah, that's a roller coaster.
Hello and welcome to another edition of Black Hills Information Security Talkin Bout News. And Ryan is back. So
I'm here.
Applause for Ryan coming back. We missed you, sir. The stories for this week, we're going to talk about Microsoft just breaking things. We're going to talk about malware that runs while your phone is even off. And then there's a whole bunch of stuff about ransomware and different types of backdoors. What's old is new and what's new is old again. The first story I would like to jump into, if you all don't mind, Microsoft patching breaks something. Basically, Microsoft Patch Tuesday broke Active Directory authentication, not globally, but in a handful of different applications. And I basically wanted to bring this up because I really felt like we were doing very well in the realm of patches and groups getting comfortable with patches and patching and starting to trust patches. And this particular one broke Network Policy Server, Routing and Remote Access, Radius Extensible Authentication Protocol, Protected Extensible Authentication Protocol, or PEAP, EPEAP. And once again, I mean, any organization that was hit by this and they were down for any level of time, do you think that organizations have wised up, or do you think something like this is going to truly set us back? Just kind of opening that up for the group.
Well, I would say a lot of places I've seen have patch cycles, right, that are 30 days, 60 days, depending upon the environment, whether or not they're public sector or private sector or government. Depends on, or kind of depends on how. Now I got somebody mowing out in front of my yard. Great. I'm going to go on mute for a second. Yeah, but that's
why I don't have neighbors.
I mean, okay, so we can see authentication failures. Is that not just background noise? Like, does anyone know of any AD environment where they aren't just triggering authentication errors all the time for some reason? I mean, I guess I don't know how bad it is. Like, does it lock out accounts or whatever? But I feel like authentication errors are just par for the course in most AD environments. But
yeah, at this point.
It sounds like EAP and PEAP are both. Well, I know they're both utilized in MS Chat, right, for the Wi-Fi. So the Wi-Fi's down, right? Wi-Fi's
yeah, but I work from home. Does this affect me if I work at home?
Yes,
it
you're
does
very
though, because
affected.
it
Look at
Radius
you.
as well. So,
There's some company that
a lot of the things. Just to go off what you were saying, Corey. I mean, with your authentication like that. Yes, you're going to see a certain number of authentication failures, but usually it's only if your authentication service is internet facing. If it's Radius, it definitely is, because you have no reason to have internal Radius. I mean, there's a couple, but not many. Yeah.
The other question comes in is how fast did Microsoft let everybody know compared to what people's patch cycles actually are? We all know that nobody's really patching the day that those patches come out there. Any good security system is going to go ahead and test those patches out first.
And in this situation, it looks like they caught it pretty quickly and they were able to resolve it relatively quickly. But like I said, even with all of this, I mean, you all know, all of you here work in security. Anytime anything you can blame on somebody else, like the systems teams and operations teams and just normal human nature is going to take advantage of that. And once again, my fear is that it's going to be pushing like a patch thing. Well, we aren't installing any patches until they've been out and vetted for like 90 days.
Sure.
And that's my biggest thing, is that we need to avoid that trap.
I mean, personally,
that's what I was talking about. I've seen that quite frequently, where people have those long patch cycles because of that reason, right? They're not tested, and so a lot of organizations do that.
Of course, if everyone delays their patching by 2 weeks, then nobody will know if it's actually vetted by the time 2 weeks is done.
I hope they don't patch, because that privilege elevation is super fun and easy to use. So
you got to weigh risk versus reward, right? Is it public facing? Is it internal only? Can you only get it from certain network segments? But something that affects Active Directory authentication like this, probably you want to get patched pretty quick. But then, you're left in this error where you can't log in.
I'm going to be a bit contrarian. Don't test patches, just run them. and I mean that deep down in my heart. I'm not being facetious or anything, because you don't. I mean, anybody that's like, we're going to test patches, you don't. There's literally hundreds of patches coming from Microsoft, all of your different vendors, whether it's Cisco, whether it's Fortinet, whether it's your app layer. You can't. You just can't. Like, the idea of testing your patches, I believe, is bunk. And I'm willing to be wrong on that, but I just don't think that organizations do that, really. I think we need to normalize install patches. When things burn down, blame the damn vendor, not your idea.
Sure.
Yeah,
Well, the
I
other
really
thing
haven't
that I've
seen people test patches.
What's that, Serena?
So I really haven't seen people test patches or want to test patches. From when I was working in TAC, I would be like, hey, this is like our gold standard. I mean, some vendors too, like Cisco, if you're looking at specific hardware equipment, they will have like a gold standard release, and then they'll have the newer versions available. Most people will go with like the one that has a gold star. But I don't see a lot of people that test patches, or if I was like, hey, you need to update to this one because of this issue or bug, people usually didn't give me that hard of a time about needing to test it out first or anything like that.
Yeah. Right. And then we got Agile Dinosaur says, some of us don't have the luxury of just let it break things. You're already doing that. I mean, I would be willing to push back, Agile Dinosaur, politely. Hey you. You aren't testing everything. You are literally YOLOing your life in IT right now. All of us are, right? Microsoft installed like 150 patches on my Windows system. I didn't go through them. I don't want to go through them. I just want the damn things to work.
Well, CISA said they were critical, John, so you need to install them all.
Yeah. You need to install them all.
I guess we need to know the. Sorry. Go ahead.
We just need to put gold stars next to them, and people are like, "These are good," because it reminds me of kindergarten.
I know that. I do like that. I want to install some gold star patches over like just normal ones.
No. From now on, I only install gold stars.
This is a Microsoft Gold levels patch.
Well, we're going to need to know the mean time to fixing the fix at Microsoft.
New metric.
Yeah,
that's going to take a minute.
Janeth Kumar said, how would you phrase don't test patches to business? Example, moves path on patching, trust the gold. That's a good point. Because I don't know if I can get in front of a board of directors and say, we're just going to install shit and see what happens, folks.
Well, it's for expediency, right? Well, which is actually that you could make an argument that due to the time it takes to test patches, we are vulnerable for that time, and we should just send it and risk the breaking over being vulnerable for 2 weeks. Also, we have a red team coming up, and I don't want them to get that local privilege elevation.
That's what gets people to we have a
patch everything
before they start. That's why they push the testing off. It's like, we got to push off a couple of weeks. It's like, why?
Patch Tuesday.
We haven't installed patches yet.
The other thing that I've actually seen is people use rings. So you'll have your IT department and a couple of key people in special departments get patches pushed out immediately. And then as they show that they're okay, it just continues to blossom outward like that.
It spreads like a virus through the network.
Pretty much.
I would also say that because of how patching works, when it breaks things in the extreme edge case that you probably weren't going to test anyway. So on that one server that one server that has exposed radius, or that one, we actually on Wi-Fi in the office of some random office that no one ever tested. That's where it's going to break stuff, not like everywhere.
Yeah.
I think it's important to like evaluate and prioritize too. So if there's something that's like, this is 100% affecting our environment with the way that we have things set up, then probably go ahead and do it right away. If there's a security release that you're like, this doesn't really impact us, then maybe you wait a few days, but you should maybe evaluate on Tuesday when all those patches come out and then go up with a plan there, either patch immediately or take the week or take 14 days. Just depending on your environment, because not everything's going to be applicable to you.
Yep. And by the way, Shovel-E Joe just had a really cool article he shared. We'll get that out to everybody. Basically, a Microsoft document talking about patching and update rings, which I think is pretty cool. All right.
Is that
so
like
I got
ring
another...
0? Just kidding.
Oh, wait. Excuse me. I think we have a weather update coming in. Yes, it's time for the weather, everybody.
Yes, that's right here. Bud Patches here with the AccuSploit Weather on the Ones, brought to you by the Technical Debt Card. It's for every risk that you want to accept. So, moving through Monday, we have a pew-pew level of low with elevated chances of meetings. Lots of executives on LinkedIn over the weekend seeing those things coming out about patching, about Big 5, about F5, Big IP, all those issues, and now they're finally coming to you with the problems you've known about for about a week. Moving into Tuesday, we're going to see the pew-pew stay low, but in this scenario, we've got a lot of spam, a lot of crypto bros, and DNS always an issue. So as you watch that Bitcoin happy line drop down, make sure you're checking in on your crypto bros to make sure that they're okay. Moving into the middle of the week, the pew-pew map is up a little to medium. And again, it's Patch Wednesday. Patch your systems. CISA actually took that patch from Microsoft off of their critical patch list for government because, well, it was breaking everything. Now, moving into Thursday, packets dropping everywhere. The pew-pew level is high. We've got a cost pressure front moving through the budget, asking why the security budget is so high, why new headcount is needed, and what we need to do to make sure that we are doing everything we can and yet not spending a penny doing it. Moving to Friday, that's right, the hackers have now slept, the criminals are back onto the market, and the pew-pew level is high. You've got proof of contact hail all through the environment. There's going to be escalations and on-call, so make sure you set your out of office to away over the weekend unless you're on call. And for those poor fools, I apologize. Your pager duty be with you. That's me, Bud Patches, with the BHIS AccuSploit certified weather. Back to you.
Thanks,
so
Bud.
much, Bud.
And tonight at 10, can EDR do your taxes?
Bud, I do have a question.
Yeah.
If somebody, if I'm looking forward through the rest of this week, what would be the best day for like a picnic or possibly blaming IT security for all my problems?
Oh, well, that's simple. Whatever day the intern starts. So whenever the interns come in and they officially get their access, that is the best day to take a picnic because anything that happens is clearly their fault.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you so much, Bud Patches, and we'll see you next week, sir. All right. Hey, speaking of the weather, so we've now got a news story. Attackers are targeting MSPs. FBI, CISA, and NSA all coming together like Voltron to warn us about attacks targeting MSPs. And there's a couple of reasons why I think that this is interesting. One, with the attacker's perspective, you get access to an MSP, you get access to all of their customers, and that's just awesome. And then the other reason why I think it's interesting is there's something like 30,000 MSPs in the United States, which is just mind-blowing. Most of these MSP attacks won't hit the front page news. Do you think that this is just more of a target opportunity that they can go after them, or do you think that it's more systematic where they're looking at it and saying this is a great way to start launching our attacks moving forward?
Is MSP security that bad? Is that what we're saying here?
Kaseya. Sorry. Yeah, I mean, from my perspective, if you're coming from the outside, you're not cool anymore. I mean, that's not all the cool kids are going supply chain business partner attacks, right? Yeah. So I feel like it's also we've seen like in the past, success with it. So if I was going to copycat it, I would copycat as well and go for the MSP. I mean, you have a trusted, potentially just a literal access path into the network, number one. Or worst case scenario, you have business email compromise. Hey, download this patch for your router and install it. And it's just like a malicious file, right? There's so many different vectors. You're coming from a place of trust and a place of like intended code execution. So that's that, like, I feel like it's super valuable.
And I think that intended code execution, I think, is key, right? Because literally the stuff that MSPs are going to use are RMM tools, right? So the attacker doesn't need to deploy anything in that environment. It's like already there.
I would use the MSP as my ransomware platform, right?
Yeah. They issue a new patch. They're like,
here's our new patch.
Yeah. Here's our new patch. Here's our new update.
No, it's dangerous for sure. I mean, with all that access, I mean, for any company that's got subsidiaries and things like that that have access into their network should be thinking about this as well, because it's not just MSPs. It's anybody who's got a lot of access to a lot of data or a lot of other companies. We've seen smaller supply chain attacks hit what seemingly random places, and then we see things like SolarWinds hit targeted areas, and then it could be these MSPs are next.
And the incentive,
like said, though, we may not hear about it because of lawyers and stuff. So, I mean,
another thing to consider there too is the configuration around how like contractors and other MSPs authenticate, because a lot of times the standards can be dropped for external contractors. Like we've done pen tests where we'll do like password sprays externally and spray a contractor account, and the contractor account either doesn't have MFA or there was a case where they had cert-based auth for VPN, and the cert was like in the contractor's email. Like they had email the cert. So that's another thing to think about too.
And the incentive to them is not to be secure or to like code really, like, for example, every MSP's client should be isolated from the others, right? But that costs a lot of money to have individual segmented environments for each one. So they probably just are like, what's a /24 between friends, right? So I feel like they might, they might be incentivized to share things that make them more vulnerable, potentially.
I can't remember if anybody on the webcast worked I know Joff was on the pen test where we were testing a company in Hong Kong, and we were scanning the inside of their internal network, and they gave us all of their ranges, and they said they had probably 300 total IP addresses. And it turned out that we found something like 7,000 live IP addresses, and a bunch of those IP addresses were in like Shanghai and Russia and Australia. And what it was basically their MSP set all of their customers up on a flat network together. And the customer asked us, they said, could you just exploit the systems and then let us know which ones are ours?
Wow. Tell me when you find us. Where's Waldo of MSPs?
That was also the same customer, by the way, that we were trying to get. We sent them a box for Nessus, and we asked them to give us the IP address. And they sent us this long thread that went back and forth between them and their MSP. And their MSP was like, these guys don't know what they're doing. And then finally, we gave them the instructions step by step. Power on the system, log into the system with the crash cart, enter this as the password for root, run ifconfig, and give us the IP address or IP config. I can't remember if it was a Windows or a Linux host. And they came back and they're like, fine, here's the IP address, 127.0.0.1. That was a nightmare. That was a nightmare. So no, it's absolutely something.
Home.
What's that? Yeah, there's no place like home. As I know that there's somebody that's new to security that's like, what's 127.0.0.1? That's your local loopback interface. That you always have that. So what other ones do we got? You guys have any stories that you want to pick on?
I mean, I feel like we should have the ransomware section sponsored by the official ransomware region of Eastern Europe.
Yeah. Do we want to talk about Conti?
Sponsored by Conti.
Hold on. Can we talk about the one that ransomware has gone down?
Yeah, that's a good one. That's a positive one.
Yeah. So this isn't all negative, right?
Well, I mean, it is trending with the Bitcoin price, right?
Yeah. The ransomware has slowed down because Bitcoin is down. No, ransomware has gone down because sanctions, supposedly, sanctions aren't supposedly, but why it's gone down against Russia are making life harder for attackers, right? So, so the Ukraine war and all the sanctions that it's caused with Russia, and considering that the ransomware pretty much comes out of mainly the ransomware district of Eastern Europe, which is
Ransomware
Way to PC it.
yes.
in Ransomville.
Ransomville. That's where ransom comes from. So, what do you guys think about this? I mean, ransomware is going down. Do you think it's just crypto, or is it really the war?
No,
It's just crypto.
attentions probably have been diverted. Yeah.
That's what I think. I think Steve nailed it. I don't think it's so much the sanctions and they're locking everything down. I really think that the attention for Russian cyber attackers is on their own country right now. That's my.
And
Although the
we
next
saw-
campaign is going to be like, pay us in Big Macs. We don't have McDonald's anymore.
We saw who was the ransomware group that got arrested in Russia and then released?
There's actually a large number of them.
There was one recently, a major one, and I'm wondering if they were then basically hired, right? Are they now diverting their attention to this other stuff in the war versus ransomware?
This is how you get your job. You just got to pull enough ransomware heist.
That's how they recruit. Yeah.
That's how they recruit. Yeah.
What I
What is
love about
what
that
is
is
this,
how
China?
quickly that went to a business discussion. Well, you see, we've got a lot of ransomware to get out, but we got a lot of resources depleted. Can we outsource this? Can we bring in a contractor to handle this while we're busy with the big project? Oh yeah, come on in.
You talk about Ian, you talk about outsourcing it, and that's literally what China did. Like after Barack Obama went to China and said, "Y'all cut out your cyber hacking," they literally just started outsourcing it to third parties to do it for them. So that's not outside of the realm of possibility.
I
Well,
believe
here's
that.
another question. How many of these groups were actually combined Ukrainians and Russians, and now they're not speaking to each other and working together?
Oh,
Well, that's Conti, because Conti, that's how all their stuff leaked and all, that was,
yeah.
That made me snort. I imagine this like office conflict where they're like, I'm just not going to close your Jira ticket. Well, you're not getting your credits.
Yes, that's literally, if you go through the chats, that's actually what happened.
I'm not paying you the commission we said we were going to pay you.
God, can you imagine trying to be a manager of a team that was Russians and Ukrainians? Like, look, guys, I know times are tough right now, but we got to stay professional.
You got to keep it together now. Keep it together.
Dimitri literally bombed my family village. How can I let that go? We don't talk about it. We put it in the employee handbook. We don't talk about religion. We don't talk about sexuality.
There's a suggestion
we don't talk about
box.
who bombed who. This is a blameless workplace here. So
I'm
So,
sorry,
Bo,
union.
since you're on, I've got to ask, you've got to have a lot of people in your circle that know. You, Steve, and Ralph are definitely in like the crypto space. Do you have a ton of people that are like panicking right now? Because wasn't it Coinbase? I think they said if they go out of business, they're literally taking everyone with them.
Yeah, I mean, anytime you have like crazy volatility in market prices, everyone's going to panic, right? Like we were talking about this last week on the CoinSec podcast about how like this is like, I don't know, like the 8th time or something, or 10th time that we've just watched like an epic crash happen, and it's kind of like we're numb to it at this point, and it sucks, but it's kind of how it goes right now,
I think wasn't it like 2017 Bitcoin hit an all-time high of like 17,000, and then it crashed down to like 3,000.
So what's funny? I was gonna say what's funny about that is like, so it hit 19, then we started the first episode of the CoinSec podcast like right after that, and so like the first like 10 episodes are all of it just crashing. It's great.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
There's one episode of just me crying. The whole episode.
I hate it. I hate it on both sides because like I have people whenever it's going crazy and it's super high, they're like, "Oh, can you tell me about, cryptocurrency and how it works?" And I'm like pulling out pens. I'm like, "Boy, do I." And I sit there and I try to talk about how blockchain works, and they're just like, "No, you idiot. I want to know how to buy Bitcoin." I'm like, "Oh." Okay.
Tell them to buy US Terra or Terra USD.
Oh,
And
no.
And then they start freaking out, and they're like, now it's like, okay, how the hell do I sell this for maximizing my profit? I'm like, I'm not your Bitcoin investor. I don't care.
Yeah, we had to say basically that none of this is financial advice many times last episode.
Yeah.
Telling people to buy Terra and Luna.
Yeah.
Which, if you don't know,
Which-
if you're so like,
Yeah,
most
Bob
of the
can
people who are listening to this have no idea what we're talking about. But there's this thing called a stable coin, which is supposed to be pegged to like a US dollar, basically. And this crazy event happened where they did what's called a depeg, where it's like you have a dollar that's supposed to be a dollar, but now it's like 99 cents, and it starts drifting down, and now it's like worth like 10 cents. And it's what's insane though is like it's supposed to be backed by this entity that's supposed to like basically like provide that funding behind it to actually make it worth a dollar.
Yeah.
And they put in like $3 billion of Bitcoin to try to back this, and it just immediately like disappeared. Now they have like 300 Bitcoins left, which is like not even close, you know.
It's called an algorithmic stablecoin, which if that doesn't scare you, then you should be scared. Especially now that we've demonstrated that algorithms can break. Breaking news.
Breaking news.
So what about, wasn't there one called Luna? Like it was worth like billions. And
That's
then
the
it went
same
to
thing.
nothing?
That's exactly what he's talking about.
Yeah.
Okay.
Basically.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, that didn't work out well. I don't know. I just think it's interesting to see that. But I do wonder if the crash in it going down has a lot to do with are they actually pegged to ransomware? Like as ransomware goes up, we're seeing cryptocurrency values be up higher if they go down. Because seriously, in financial markets, if you knock things off by 10 to 15%, you can cause a complete destabilization of a market. And I'm wondering if we're seeing like just even like a 10 or 15% dip in ransomware attacks is actually leading or contributing in a major way to this crash.
So the thing you have to understand is that not like at the end of the day, they're still cashing out to USD, right? Like they're probably tossing it through mixers. They're still cashing out like, all right, they wanted $5 million, but they chose to use Bitcoin as a payment method due to the ability to, you know, it's harder to track, right? Which it's still trackable. One of the things we talk about literally every week is these multi-million-dollar hacks where they're passing it through this mixer service called Tornado Cash. And a mixer is essentially like a way to throw thousands and thousands of different addresses at a single wallet, and they all kind of get tumbled around in this single wallet so that it's very hard to track.
Like a dryer at a laundromat.
Yeah.
No, John, see, it's more like if you went to a concert and said, everyone take a bag of $10,000. And then at the end, you just had everyone send you a Bitcoin transaction of $10,000.
Oh, I was going to say, dude, BHIS sucks at capitalism, and we give free dinners, steak dinners on and dinners on the USS Midway. We don't suck that bad at capitalism.
Take
your $350 ticket, we'll give you $10,000 in cash. You just got to share it and give it back.
I will say some of the ransomware groups might have a wee bit of a liquidity problem right now. They might
they were holding.
Because I mean,
all on Wall Street bets with options open backed with Bitcoin, going. So I'm leaving the planet. I cannot do anything. But before I forget, the whole thing about the bags of money. I have a friend who tells a story all the time where they said, when Bitcoin started to get popular, Domino's did a whole thing where it was like, oh, you can buy a pizza in Bitcoin. And he tells a story about buying a single pizza with 17 Bitcoin.
Yep. It's like the world's most it was more. It might have been more than that, but
10,000 was the first one.
It might have not had been Domino's, but there is like the world's most expensive pizza, and the price changes a lot. And right now, it's looking like a pretty expensive pizza, but not like a Jeff Bezos pizza.
Not Jeff Bezos. I don't even want to know what the toppings would be. Let's leave that up to our audience, folks. What do you think would be on the Jeff Bezos pizza? Why did I do that?
Right.
I shouldn't have done that. That was a bad idea. Okay. Well,
I need
let's
to
roll
type
with
on
it.
an anonymous account in the chat.
Everyone's jumping over to
everyone's getting their burner account right now to type these things in.
I think we need to disable gifts right
Souls
now.
of Amazon workers. Classic.
Souls.
I like the
funny
digital,
because like Ben from KC and Wade both typed in souls at the exact same time. It's just what they went with.
Yeah.
All right. So the next one I want to talk about is Conti picking on Costa Rica. And I find it weird that they're causing a tremendous amount of damage to the Costa Rican government, and they're asking for 10 million. And maybe that's less than that. Now I got a question. So whenever this first started happening, it was actually a couple of weeks ago, and Bitcoin has gone down quite a bit. So does this mean that it's a better deal for Costa Rica now? Like if they hold and wait a little bit longer?
Get a discount.
Well, did they ask for a specific amount of Bitcoin in Bitcoin,
Yeah,
or did
they
they ask for a
wanted
specific
10
amount
million.
of USD?
You see, but that's the question. In the article, it just said 10 million is what the article says. But I wonder if that's variable with the cost of Bitcoin. But
Because they could make out if they got paid now and then the price goes up, then they're sitting on the beach, probably in Costa Rica, hanging out.
Something tells me they will not be leaving the ransomware region of Eastern Europe anytime soon.
Yes, welcome to the ransomware resort here in Costa Rica.
Yeah, we actually ransomed a resort and they just decided to close up shop, so we bought it.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's interesting. It doesn't seem that much money. I know that seems jaded, but for shutting down large sections of the government, it seems to me like paying it might be the best thing. Of course, I can kind of see Costa Ricans kind of being like, F you. We have no problem working this out on our own. But,
yeah, we don't need the government anyway.
Yeah.
We've been doing fine for a
in
while.
Costa Rica, I think they got rid of the military. I want to say in like the 50s or in the 60s or 70s, I think. They got rid of their standing military. They might just be pushing Costa Rica like one step further, just getting rid of their government. And libertarians are all excited. They're like, oh my God, great. Country without
but
a
no,
government.
the National Meteorological Institute is hit. So Bud Patches is probably over there pushing buttons, trying to get things turned back on. Yeah,
Poor
I mean,
Bud.
you'd have to.
You can work with them, get them set up. So.
There was one TikToker who was in the US who moved to Costa Rica and like he was super libertarian and all this stuff. I was like, they have like socialized healthcare and stuff there,
Everything.
right?
Yeah.
Like,
My favorite quote was, libertarians are a lot like cats. They're absolutely convinced of their fierce independence, and they hold in contempt and completely are oblivious of the system that supports them. So
if you haven't had a chance, there's an old video, and it's just do a Google search for was it Liberia? No, not Liberia. It's Libertarian Paradise. If you do a search for that, and it is hysterical. It's this couple going on a vacation, and they're like, "Wow, this is the nicest public beach I've ever been on." And they're like, "Did you say public beach? You mean this is taxpayer funded?" And then they go to Somalia. That was it. It's Somalia, Libertarian Paradise. And they're like, "The market's at work, and I now have cholera." So good. That's all I ever think of when that comes up.
I've got to be careful. That might be getting a little bit too political. Maybe. I don't know.
No, libertarians don't have a party, John. This is a two-party.
I know. And that's one of the things I love about them. They're adorable that way. So
Gary Johnson or something. I don't know. He's run like every year for the last 20 years. I don't know.
Yeah. All right. Let's move on. The next one I want to talk about is the BPF backdoor. I don't know if you heard about this. The BPF backdoor. Now,
is BPF like the thing when you use IP tables that you use to filter things, or is it something?
Berkeley packet filter, and then you can also use eBPF, which allows you to do more things hooking into the kernel. That's super duper cool. So the cool thing about this backdoor is that it doesn't listen on a port. And one of the articles that I read about it, they were like, this brand new technique where the backdoor doesn't communicate on any port. It basically rides as a parasite process on top of existing packets that come into the system. And they did a nice write-up of it, but it is kind of cool, right? So if you take over a web server, what you do is you basically tag your TCP packets. So there's a little bit of data at the front of the packet, or you can give them all the exact same IP ID, because IP ID is not really used all that much because we don't have a lot of fragmentation happening on the internet. But there's a number of ways that you can tag your TCP IP packets. And if they come in with that tag, it throws it to the back door. The data goes into the back door. If it comes in and it doesn't have the tag, it forwards it on to the application. So I read this and people were talking about it, and there was some articles were like, this is incredible. We've never seen anything like this. And I was like, BS. I distinctly remember something like this years ago, and I couldn't remember the name of the back door. I just couldn't. There was a backdoor that did this exact same thing for Windows-based systems. And the name of the backdoor, as I'm researching and desperately trying to figure out what is the name of the backdoor, I was able to find it. And I finally found this article in Computer Networking, and it came out in 2008, used the Hacker Defender rootkit or HackDef. And it had this wonderful, helpful video, Hacker Defender rootkit by John Strand.
Wow, that came out of left field.
I know.
So yeah, this basically is, once again, I am old, and I think that's quickly what it's coming down to on this. But I like seeing stuff like this, guys. I do. I love it whenever I see novel improvements in malware, novel improvements in attacks. And that's one of the things that's tough about doing the show, is so much of the attacks are like, well, it's ransomware, runs application layer, and it basically like locks your computer. So much of the malware is the exact same thing that we see. And somebody saw John's desperately searching for his own tool. I did not write Hacker Defender. It was written by a gentleman by the name of Holy Father, was the author back in 2006.
Yeah, that's the pseudonym you had for a while then, huh?
Did you write Temple OS, John?
No, actually, my pseudonym years ago when I first got started was Next Gen Hacker 101.
You showed me how to do a Tracer T.
Yeah, Tracer T, so you can see the number of people logged into Google at any given point.
So,
we got a white cyber duck there. We all assume that the person who recorded that video was male model John Strand.
Yeah,
probably.
Absolutely.
He took over your Vimeo. Like, he's like, I'm better. I needed to.
I got this.
So I have a question for technical people. How easy would this kind of IP packet messing with would that be easy to detect at like a network level, I assume?
No.
Or no?
No, it would actually be really hard. And part of the reason why is the service sits. So imagine you would have to be able to differentiate between web traffic coming into the server and like the web traffic that's going to the web service, and then also what's going to the rootkit. And the way that the rootkits are actually designed is the actual service that's grabbing those packets that have the tag on the front of them. That's actually a hidden process. So one of the ways that you can detect, God damn, I swear, it's like I'm teaching back in 2008 and there's a string in my back. One of the ways that you can do that is you can actually do some auditing of the application and see how much data is being sent and received to the application versus the total aggregate amount of data that's being sent and received on the network. That's really, really, really difficult to actually do that from a practical perspective. But even from a beaconing perspective, you can make your traffic blend right in and it looks just like HTTP traffic. In fact, you can even do GET requests and you can put your stubs inside of the GET requests as well.
Could you read those packets with deep packet inspection, something like that, to see those flags turned on?
Yes, no, maybe so. One, you could, if you have full TLS SSL interception, but then underneath it, you can still encode it even further. Much like we do with a lot of our backdoors. We'll use TLS, but then there'll be encryption underneath it. So that makes it somewhat difficult. The other thing that's difficult with these types of rootkits that you start getting into like more advanced rootkits is you don't know where that tag is actually going to be. Like, what is the thing that's going to trip it up? Sometimes, as I mentioned, you could use IP ID and you might be able to see a consistent IP ID. Or you could use something, since most operating systems are randomizing the IP IDs, you can set it up so your backdoor only uses certain IP IDs that were based on certain prime numbers. Or you could alter the window size, or you can use TCP options. There's a wide variety of different ways that you can set this up, because literally what you're doing is you're actually hooking into the TCP sockets on that system, and you're hijacking them and you're having them watch for these flags, and you can literally put them any place that you want them to go. The other thing that was interesting about this one, though, talking about this specific backdoor, is they use DGA for using the backdoor for communication going outbound. They were using your standard DNS tunneling. So the subdomain or the host portion of a domain was randomized, and you would see a large number of like unique subdomains. And a tool that can detect that, by the way, is Rita.
You just had two of those questions on the old chat there.
Yeah. Oh yeah, Bob, you can actually detect it with Rita on the DNS tab in Rita as well.
So fun fact, this backdoor has also been written for Solaris Spark, which I think is kind of interesting. They were like,
once again, old dudes doing old dude stuff.
Yeah, like, they can't fire me. I'm gonna always have access to this.
I'll always.
I'm gonna patch it. I'm gonna patch it and install VI the second I get back in.
So, John, I do have to ask though. Now, how many? By show of hands, how many people, based on John's string in the back thing, want me to make a Woody doll that you pull with John's face? It's like you pull.
I
the
want
string.
that.
Yes.
As soon as you guys can tell that I'm reading off of a slide from a decade ago, and I'm just like going into it.
What would be his catchphrases though?
Well, with my face, it's like,
there's a C2 in my boot. Like that.
Yeah, I like it. I'm in. I think we can come up with some more catchphrases than that. Like
we
deep
should
packet
make dolls and then
inspection.
give them out
let
like
me
condoms.
talk about cyber threat intelligence and how much I hate it. So yeah,
I woke up at 3:30 a.m. Wait, no. Sorry.
that doesn't happen that much, although it happens way more than it should, to be honest. So. All right, any other stories you all like?
Well,
I mean, the college just straight up shutting down because they got
yeah, I mean, they
ransomware.
couldn't take it anymore.
I know it's probably like a long story, but it's just funny to be like, well, I'm done. Screw this.
Well, it really was, the ransomware was the last step in it all. Their enrollment and everything had been going down for years. I had a couple of friends back in the day that actually went to that college, and it's just been, it's a nice small college, but as things have shifted, they weren't agile enough to shift with stuff and keep people interested in going into them.
Including Windows patches.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah.
Is this the one that tweeted out, "Oh my gosh, shut down your computer"?
That's a good tweet, though.
Is this
tweet.
them, or was that a different?
I think
college?
that's a different.
That's
Okay.
a different one.
That's a
Oh,
different college that got ransomware.
So
Yeah.
okay, should we buy the rights to this college?
I think this is a perfect example of
BHIS
a
University.
university taking one for the team. Because when you have a large scale story, they're like, F it, we're just going out of business. You know that all the ransomware people in Ransomwareville, they're totally like, okay, stay away from universities. Maybe they don't have as much money as we thought they did.
Dude, I'm sorry. It says we've survived many difficult and challenging times. The economic crisis of 1887. Everyone remembers that one. A major campus fire in 1912. The Spanish flu, the Great Depression, World War II, 2008 global financial crisis. But this is different. Really? Just patch your systems. It's not that different.
Well, obviously, they've been around a long time. They don't really understand computers too well.
They're like, this is just like the War of 1812.
No, but
in all seriousness, though, I did support one of my first like real big pants IT jobs was SunGuard Higher Education, and this is back before they changed names. But colleges and universities are notoriously difficult to secure, especially research schools, because you've got all the different colleges have their own grant money and budgets. And so they've all got their own shadow IT, their own this. It's not even shadow IT, it's grant money to talk to all the other stuff. And you've got people actually studying in that field, and also scientific machines in some cases that can only work on like OS2 Warp, but it's a $1 million electron microscope, so we're going to keep OS2 Warp. It's terrible. So I actually feel kind of bad for that school if they were struggling and trying to get there, and that was just.
Well, all right, devil's
but the whole
advocate
campus
here.
burned down in 1912, and they survived that. I mean, yes. I mean, don't get me wrong. Computers are higher ed is hard. BHIS has done a lot of higher ed, and it's always like, okay, here we go. But I mean, they survived a major campus fire. Like, as much as ransomware is a big deal, like it's not as big of a deal as like, hey, the dorm is on fire and there's people in there. Like, I don't know.
What was their financial situation at the time?
Right.
I think that they had a ransomware insurance policy and it, maybe paid out. I don't know.
Or maybe it didn't. I'm going with one of the, but it goes back to that statement, right? I think that the big thing that we're taking issue is that statement. Here's a whole bunch of things that killed literally millions of people.
But ransomware.
Ransomware is the thing that finally did us in, right?
Right. Yeah. It's got to be just an excuse. To me, it feels like an excuse. Like, it's like, well, we were kind of lazy, we didn't really do anything.
Back
So-
then, we were more competent than we are today. So. By the way, Princess Marcia, we're talking about all those old things, and Princess Marcia said John Strand lived through all those things. Marcia.
That is true. That is true. You are a vampire who's lived over 2,000
The
years.
Hindenburg.
He's actually got slide decks from that war.
Yeah.
He's like, why the cyber implications of the economic crisis of 1887?
Serena, they're called transparencies. Thank you very much.
No. They were definitely etched in stone around that time.
No, John used PowerPoint. You just stood on a stage and you went, "This is how we're going to do it, and that's how we're going to do it."
PowerPoint.
They also blamed COVID. So there you go. At least they blamed something.
You know what? They took the book and blamed everybody. There you go.
Yeah. So, all right. Any other stories? That was a good one. Now that I'm feeling old, it's time for me to go take a nap.
Blame ransomware, I guess, is the, if you have a problem, just go ahead and blame ransomware.
Do we need to redo the song "Blame Canada"? Blame ransomware. Blame ransomware.
That can go on. That's what we call
Bitcoin crash. Blame ransomware.
Can we talk about this one last one? So the Active Directory privilege escalation.
Oh,
Certified.
Certified.
Well, yeah, that was the one I was saying. I hope no one patches because it's super nice. I used it to get DA on my current engagement.
All right, so this is another privilege escalation vulnerability with certificate or Microsoft Active Directory certificate servers, right? And the exploit is kind of interesting, but in essence, you kind of join a machine to the domain and all the other fun stuff. But it seems like the Active Directory certificate services are really getting attacked recently, and they tend to always be the privilege escalation technique recently. This got brought up not too long ago where everyone was like, hey, we should look over at this. And now it's just getting raked over the coals, right?
I almost wonder, the original authors of things like certificate services, because a lot of these things haven't been updated. They keep adding more stuff, right? But a lot of the code was written back in 99 or something like that. I wonder if the developers are a bunch of old whitebeards. They're like, dear God, I hope the hackers never look at my code that I wrote in 2000. And then this happens. And they're like, they found us.
They found us.
What happened with the XP code leak? I mean, they started looking through all the code and it was like, oh, well, wait a minute. Nobody is running XP anymore. But they looked through all that and it's like, oh, wait, if that worked there, what are the chances they reuse that code in 10? And
very good. Very good chances. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Right. So with this one, basically what they're doing is they're updating a machine account to say that the DNS host name is that of the domain controller. So you're basically saying, hey, I'm the domain controller. It's my network now, right?
It doesn't check if the LDAP name is unique. So you can just set it the same LDAP name as a DC on an arbitrary machine account if you have permissions to do that.
Yeah, you can do that by either adding a computer account or updating one if you have system on it, right?
It's my domain controller and I want it now.
So one thing about this is that if you do patch this, but it's already been exploited, the certificate is still valid, right? Unless you roll it.
So is this a brand new group policy preference where
right?
It's like a forever day?
Kind of. So if someone exploits this against you before you manage to patch and they do end up getting that certificate signed by the DC that's valid, I think, 5 years or 10 years by default? A long time.
The normal 5 years. It needs to be 5 years at least. Yeah.
So I think if that happens, make sure you roll your certificates in ADCS and
and then have all your systems check that certificate revocation.
Treat it like a golden ticket. Basically.
So one of my questions for the testers on this webcast right now is, years ago, an exploit coming out while I was testing was like a gift from God. It was very rare for it to come out. It seems to me like, especially in privilege escalation and Active Directory, these types of things come out a lot more than they did, or am I just reading into that wrong?
No, you're right. It seems like recently over the last couple of years, we've been getting them in every couple months. There's a new hot. If you're on an engagement right then, you can grab and run with it. And a lot of times that it'll be a privilege escalation, like insta DA kind of deal.
A lot of them require a lot of other steps, and this is no exception. A lot of it's more complicated. It's not like use MSO 8067, set
Yes,
target 10
yes.
10 1 5, run. Okay, got my shell. Like, it's not, it's more like, I mean, Steve and Ralph and I literally spent maybe a whole day getting on my client to work, and then another maybe 2 days getting it to work on Steve's client. So like, and we're, I mean, obviously we're pretty dumb, but like, you know, there are a lot of preconditions. You have to be able to create a machine account. So we had to find an OU, or we could create a machine account. You have to be able to set the password or this, or, oh, the host name resolution isn't working, all that stuff. So I think they do come out a lot, but they also have all these, like, I mean, go read through that blog post. It is a labyrinth of, like, the Active Directory certificate services has these attributes, and these are checked uniquely, but these aren't checked uniquely. So you can just set these. So it's like, I think the complexity is higher, but they are, like, I think these older code bases are getting raked over the coals, like Ralph said.
I think part of that is because of the awareness this community has been going through, right? There's more people coming into InfoSec, there's more people doing research, and a lot of this old stuff is just getting, we see sometimes some of the old exploits we used to use, or like John was saying, are getting renewed again because there's just more people, and sometimes that research is pretty obscure. So, but I think there's just a lot more people doing research in this field now, and it's helping to bring a lot of these issues to light.
And like someone said in chat, the news does spread so fast, right?
Yeah.
You have Patch Tuesday happens, then you have about a week where everyone publishes proof of concepts, and then
fake proof of concepts on GitHub,
right?
and
And if you're not patched after that,
I mean, you got 1 week to test your patch if that's what you're doing.
Yeah.
And that's like
at the max. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, what's the shirts that are out there? Exploit Wednesday. It's Patch Tuesday, Exploit Wednesday.
POC Monday.
One of the things, though, on that point, though, that I did want to mention is when at companies I've worked for, when we have an external tester testing, and they get one of those, manna from heaven, like, oh, and I've done it. I always come back with, yeah, that's cool, but what else did you find? And people go, no, like, you needed to patch this. And I go, yeah, but that came out yesterday, and inside of our own corporate policy, we have 30, 60, 90, 14 days, maybe 72 hours, whatever it is. And we might even have a critical vulnerability process going all the way back to what John said at the beginning, where we say, the juice is worth the squeeze here. This is so bad that breaking the machine that makes money is better than dealing with the incident, so we're just going to do it. But even all of that, I'd go back to the testers and say, thank you for the report. This is awesome. But did you find any other, like, technical debt or things like that?
I think that's absolutely a valid question. But the other flip side of that coin is when something like this happens, almost all of our customers will go to our testers and be like, Steve, Corey, can you make this work on our environment?
Right.
Well, I think we have to, like we've talked about in the past, assume compromise. So if you're going to do that, you need to assume that somebody is ready to use this the day it comes out. Right?
Oh, agreed.
So, but I think it matters what kind of test we're doing, depending upon how much coverage we get, right? A pen test versus a red team. So we didn't scan for vulnerabilities, right? I think you're absolutely right, though. If you're going to do this, we try not to go down rabbit holes, right? Especially if you're trying to get coverage in the network. So but I mean, again, and you said something about policy. Maybe that's a good point. Good time to evaluate policy, right?
Well, it's also about detection. There are two big points I want to call out. One, it's about detection, right? So maybe you can't patch it, but let's work on it and make sure you can detect it at the very least. If we're on a live engagement and I say, hey, I just got DA with this new exploit, you haven't patched, and you're like, okay. And I'm like, okay, but did you detect it? Can we build a detection for this request? Because ADCS is not a high traffic item, so it shouldn't be that hard to detect this attack, and there's probably IOCs and all that stuff. Number one. So that's number one. Number two is DA. I mean, okay, so I got privilege elevation. That's not the report. The report is, what can I do with DA? Can I pivot into sensitive business units that are supposed to be isolated? Can I access sensitive data? Can I get into security products or alerting? Can I, like, that for me as a tester is more information or more valuable than, like, oh, you got we got DA. Okay, cool, peace. Like, that to me is like a pointless pen test report. Like, start with DA, and where do you go from there? That's what matters to me. But there's two things I wanted to call out.
Yeah, absolutely. And don't get me wrong. I wasn't trying to say that using exploits like that as they come out is wrong. Yeah, the attackers don't care that we've got a policy. I'm just saying that business, it looks at a certain level of risk and says, we cannot deploy that quickly. So it's great that you found that, and we're definitely going to patch it. But, I like your point, though, Corey, is really you pivot that to, and I do that as well. I say, well, what could you do with it? Because it doesn't matter if it was this exploit or, the next 10. Doesn't matter, So,
well, and in some of those cases, these things come out before the patches. So, okay, we found it. We verified that it's there. Let's go back and look at the logs or look at previous stuff in the history to see if this has been utilized before, right? So it's good. Yeah, it's absolutely good to test it. And like Corey said, pivot off on some detection. So
it should be detectable immediately. Even if it can't be patched, you should be able to detect it. Better to know you've been exploited than to not know.
There were 2 stories here that I liked, and they don't need a ton of discussion. They can almost be like pointing out, but your soft mute button might not work. And it's like, go patch yourself. Everybody go get a physical mute button. Do that. And then we're talking about the money from the school. And yet the DoD was like, we accidentally paid $23 million. What happened? That's
I think they just don't like Zoom. They're just like, nah, we're out. Zoom.
They played $23 million over Zoom?
No.
Did they?
Where's that? Like,
that would be pretty funny. The DoD's on a Zoom. They're like, oh, was that our bank account number? Oh, crap.
Not that again.
You owe us for some rockets.
So wait, John, one more story we should cover, and you mentioned this at the beginning, was the phones that are turned off thing?
Oh, yeah. So with iPhones, if there's still some power, even if they're turned off, a lot of their near-field communication is still enabled. And this actually makes sense. Like some people were talking about it as like, well, this just proves they're setting up dark backdoors the government can gain access to. But the reality of the situation is they want to make the phones detectable. Even when the phone is off, so you can do find my phone and still be able to find your phone even if it's off.
Which is awesome as a user, because I lose my phone all the time. It dies, and if it gets stolen, I can have Ralph go get the guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's actually a bounty, Ralph the bounty hunter.
On the flip side, it turns out that I think the chip that does that keeps it going, you can actually load malware on that. And we're coming up with a
Enclave chip? Is that the chip that
No, it's the Bluetooth. It's one of the chips that enables Bluetooth, it says.
But it's Bluetooth low energy, and I can't remember what else, but they all share the same chip, apparently.
Gotcha.
For that communication.
And also the ultra wideband too, which is really what they use for the Find My iPhone feature. So that's like
So this kind of leads me to kind of bring up, we have a shirt that we're coming out with. Hopefully we'll have some mock-ups. It's called Malware Finds a Way, and it's a Jurassic Park. And
you mean from last week? Oh god.
Yeah, that's actually, Corey, you've got to see the mock-up.
It's great.
I don't know if I want to see it now.
You don't want to see it. Keep it a surprise because it's great. It's great. All right, so let's wrap it up. Thank you so much, everybody, for coming. We greatly appreciate it. As always, as you say at the end of these videos, one, if you made it this far, thank you. We really appreciate it. And also hit like and subscribe, because something happens if you do that. I haven't figured out how money
gets his wings.
But I'm supposed to say like and subscribe. All right, thank you so much, everybody. Take care.